The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Hope your weekend was great. Monday edition here. Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel back with you as we'll get rolling here. Lots on the docket today. Some thoughts on Nebraska baseball as the season came to an end in a slugfest yesterday in Stillwater, 17-11. Not enough outs, a brutal weather delay, and enough offense to win a lot of games, just not yesterday. We'll hear from Will Bolt and some takeaways Elijah and I have on this baseball season. Numbers to get in, 489-1240, 489-1240. You can dial up 800-825-5865, toll-free across the Hail Varsity Radio Network. Several affiliates. You can hear us, can watch and participate in the stream on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Always like and subscribe there. Find us on Twitter at HVarsity Radio is where you can go and follow the show that way. Tim Verghese, Inside Nebraska Rivals recruiting hit coming up from Tim in about 15 minutes. It is June. June means verbal commits for Matt Rule based on last June. Where's Nebraska at? Who are they targeting? What are some timelines? Tim is really good at what he does with recruiting, locked in. So get Tim Verghese's thoughts. Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride in 1 hour. We'll say hi to Uncle Charlie as we are in full summer mode. And summer mode means you blink and it will soon be fall camp mode. And then we'll wind down Jay Moore, Blackshirt Husker NFLer, with us, and we'll hit on some things with Jay. 489-1240, the number to get in. Again, Chris at HailVarsity.com is where you go. FPI is out, and it does not have a lot of pleasant things about Nebraska from a percentages standpoint when it comes to playoff predictions and all of that, but it is year two, right? You're probably, as a Nebraska football fan, kind of teaming up with excitement on best case scenario versus reality. We had all summer to chew on that, but a lot of thumbs up towards many SEC and other Big Ten programs. So there's that. Really good story from Sam McEwen on just Nebraska's build. We'll get to some of that right up the middle on both lines of scrimmage, how that will be kind of the tail of the tape for Nebraska and success. But let's head down to Stillwater, Elijah, and just get some quick thoughts on Nebraska baseball. It was frustrating. So I was out with my buddy Nate. We were golfing yesterday, and then had both phones going for the ultimate experience. It wasn't quite the backyard patio experience, but yes, this was golf while we watched baseball, and then the weather delay happened. And then me and Mama got off to a watering hole and watched the rest of the ball game. It was just frustrating. Brockett was batted around. Florida's just that good offensively. And listen, you heard all about it last week about the Gators and their offense and what they are. Really talented. They somehow found a way to beat Oklahoma State last night. I know they're engaged right now in that winner-take-all to move on to the Supers. But listen, it was a really good season, not perfect season for Nebraska baseball. They gave you some highlights. I think you can like this team. I think you can really respect this team's resiliency because, let's be honest, there's a lot of folks that were tapping out or, hey, this team's just too inconsistent for me, or just when there was a big moment, sometimes it wouldn't work out for Nebraska. They'd always bounce back. They would absolutely always bounce back. I know the midweeks were frustrating, so that's a to-do list for Will Bolt. He knows it, get the midweeks better. But I like this team moving forward. I like what's coming back. And a guy that I'm going to circle as maybe a future star, and I know he's not logged a ton of innings, and when he was in, it wasn't always great. Guy looked great against Florida yesterday in limited action. Ty Horn is a guy in an arm as a freshman I'm really anxious to look at. There's some guys that need to make some decisions. The senior class did a hell of a job, and they're going to be missed. But I think there's a lot of really good talent on this baseball team, not only with the arms, but I think offensively you're going to see a Nebraska baseball team that will have some more pop but still be able to beat you in diverse ways. This team came together. They made it special with an exclamation point in Omaha last weekend, getting you a conference championship. And really, they peaked at the right time, especially after that ultimate step backward against Ohio State. I think that's the lasting memory of this 2024 baseball team for Will Bolt. They just kept on throwing punches, and I think you can smile about that as a Nebraska fan. And they didn't quite go as, I mean, the dream was, all right, Stillwater's open, so maybe you make another run. But listen, 40 wins is nothing to sneeze at. They had a very aggressive schedule, and against some of the higher level talent, they didn't embarrass themselves. They could have got better pitching, and they needed to get better pitching after the weather delay. Didn't happen. Not an unfamiliar story with, all right, Nebraska, let's go to the bullpen. And when it's early bullpen access, sometimes that didn't work out well.
Let's be clear. Florida's beaten a lot of teams 17-10 type scores this year. That's how they are built to beat people. And I think yesterday afternoon into the evening was kind of just the reminder of the gulf that there is still between the Big Ten and the rest of college baseball. I hopefully said last week, hey, maybe this weekend can be an opportunity with Indiana, Illinois, and Nebraska to show the Big Ten is getting better at baseball. Well, there's still a pretty wide gap, and I do believe the Big Ten is getting better at baseball.
Yeah, I think so.
The gap between the SEC and the Big 12 and where the Big Ten at is as wide as the Grand Canyon still. Adding some West Coast teams help potentially. We'll see maybe a little bit. But what this year truly showed me as a whole was that Will Bolt does have the right type of makeup to build a baseball team that can go out and compete and go win the Big Ten on a year-in, year-out basis. Maybe not win it every single year, but be in contention to go win it every single year. Because there were some doubts in my own mind. That 2021 team in Fayetteville was still some holdovers from the Erstad teams mixed in with some talent that Bolt had brought together. It wasn't fully a team that he had built. And then you looked at 2022 and last year and you say, I'm not sure. Now that it's the teams that are fully his own, they've struggled a little bit. This was the year that was the proof to me, hey, Will Bolt can recruit and develop at a level that can take Nebraska to the top of the Big Ten. And I think it can have some staying power with some of the younger guys, as you mentioned, Ty Horn. I look at Jeske as well, Sanderson. There are guys this year that are young in the program that are going to continue to get better. You need to augment that with some more talent, both in the portal and from the high school ranks. But I see a team that has staying power near the top of the Big Ten. Now it comes down to little tweaks, little things you can do. I know it was a disappointing weekend, but I do think you may be closer than it looked this weekend to this Husker baseball team being able to go and compete with some teams in a regional. Maybe not host a regional every single year, not win a regional, advance to a super regional. College World Series still feels a long way off at this point in time. But I think there are little tweaks you can make. Particularly, I think you really, really need another starting arm that you can truthfully rely upon. McConaughey came on strong at the end of this season. But
same with Sears. I mean, both those guys kind of came out of nowhere, and I think that blueprint can make you excited for arm development. Nebraska can be a really good pitching program, but from an offensive standpoint, you need more than a couple of guys in the lineup to hit.
I mean, that's kind of what I'm saying. It's like the depth, both pitching-wise and hitting-wise. I mean, I think you have guys, Karen and Swanson, especially with how Swanson's
awesome.
played
They were fun.
They could have started for a lot of college baseball teams in America. Brett Sears is a weekend starter for a lot of college baseball teams in America, and so is McConaughey. But you look elsewhere, need some more depth pitching-wise, need some more depth hitting-wise, and that's always going to be tough in the Big Ten because of the obstacles that you face recruiting to the Big Ten Conference. But I think it's little tweaks, little things, a couple more bats, and you know what? You could be making a run to a super regional. This year wasn't the year, but it was a step in the right direction. It showed me that Will Bolt is the right man to lead this Husker baseball program moving forward. It was a team that he fully built, and it was a pretty damn good baseball team.
Well, I love their mental toughness. I love their ability to bounce back. And listen, you get those 4 Pac-12 schools in here. You keep having years where, all right, the Big Ten was a 3-bid league. We thought at most it was 2. Indiana and Illinois got in the baseball dance, so to speak. You're going to have Oregon that's in the dance. Presumably USC gets back to being USC. UCLA's not far removed from being a power.
Almost 10 years now.
Well, but they've been good.
Historically, they have shown that they can recruit well whenever they have the right man in charge.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Washington is, we'll see. But the league bid will expand by a couple, and you just need to keep scheduling and winning these non-conference RPI games, and please fix your midweek. But Brockett, 1 in the 3rd inning, tagged 7 runs, 6 of those earned, 6 hits, faced just 13 batters. The thing that sucks for Nebraska with that weather delay is Freilich was on his game 2 2/3, and then you get the weather delay. You got to change pitchers there. Dice comes in, gets tagged. Borst also gets hit. And then, of course, Kyle Perry, you're sick for him, just 2/3, and gets 3 bombs hit off of him. So that was no good for KP, and you're sick for him. But I liked Horn. He just went an inning, 2 strikeouts, 3 batters faced. I think there's a lot to like moving forward with Big Red Baseball. Who's on the line?
We have Deuce.
Deuce, thanks for calling. Appreciate you jumping in. How are you?
I'm doing good. Hey, I think the most disappointing thing about this team was there were just certain games where they absolutely could not get out of their own way to start the game, and I wonder why you're just. I mean, the very first play yesterday, it leads to an error, leads to a run.
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of things that you just don't expect to see in college baseball. The other thing is their lack of fundamentals sometimes just baffles me. When you played baseball or when your kids played baseball, one of the fundamental things you learned was if you were on third base with less than 2 outs and the ball was hit in the air to the outfield, you didn't take off for home plate. You stayed on the base. If they dropped the ball, you were going to score. If they caught the ball, you were going to tag and score. And yet that cost us a run Friday night in a place where it was pretty key.
No, you're right. That was a 7th inning moment that it's really at this level, and I think Bolt would tell you it's unacceptable, quite honestly, and not making excuses.
But part of that has to be the players.
Sure.
I mean, they have to be. I mean, you have to take ownership of some of that yourself. I mean, we talked earlier this year about the fact that some of the things that happened wouldn't have been stood for in dugouts that I was in my life. There'd have been somebody coming down on the team would have been down there saying, "Get your head out of somewhere."
That's fair. No, and that's part of that next step that Will talked about, and he's not throwing the current guys under the bus, but you got to just keep recruiting good players. So the next second baseman, and I'm not picking on Rhett here because he had a really nice season, but yeah, you can't get off on the wrong foot like that where it's a routine to second and you throw over and your first baseman's got to make a windmill tag and you can't get the tag down. And then if you're Brockett, you're just like, oh, bleep, right? I mean, it's a bad snowball. It's a bad snowball. But, hey, 40 wins is good. There were some moments this season that didn't look like they were going to be a 40-win club. Other moments, you're like, all right, how far can they go? And there's that gray area that we're trying to figure out.
Exactly.
Well, I think the
difference, thanks, man.
Difference between a good baseball team and a regional host baseball team, consistency.
Sure.
And there were flashes this
midweek.
Year. That's part of consistency. Are you the same baseball team every single time you step out there? And this team clearly was not. They were not the same baseball team every single time they took the field this year. And
neither was Florida.
No, and that's a hard adjustment to make. Like, you look at the teams out there that are advancing to a super regional right now and took care of business in their regional. They were consistent all weekend long. And that's what it takes. That's a hard step to take. I mean, you can say that just about any sport. Like, say about Husker basketball this year, inconsistency on the road.
Be the same dudes that show up or the same gals who show up every game. That is the chase for every head coach in college or high school or even pro sports.
And it's the difference between good and great, the difference between great and elite. Level of consistency. How often are you that team that is playing at its highest level? And Nebraska baseball, to their credit, I think 30-plus games this year, they were playing their best baseball. But what about the other 20?
No, and that's very fair. Let's get our starting 5 shout-outs in the stream. Coach Brandon is in at number 1. Good to have you, bud. Jeff is here. KG got in at 3rd. Black Hills Brennan is in, says afternoon. Patrick, good to have you. Our man Cliff down in Florida. Cliff says, I outran the sheriff. I'm present. Justin is here. NASCAR Eric, good to have you. Eat Beef says good afternoon. Roger is back. Montana Husker fan is here. Jack, good to have you. The other Dave, let's roll a beautiful Monday. Camp month it is. We'll get all sorts of camp thoughts from Tim Verghese coming up. Jimmy is here. Good to have him. The other Brian checks in. Sal, Big Sal is here. Vince says what's up. Tim is in. Tuck, good to have you. Tuck, Dave, what's up? Good to spend time with you here on the stream. And we'll get to more thoughts. We'll shift from baseball to recruiting, and we'll have some Will Bolt coming up here in about 20 minutes. It's Hail Varsity on a Monday, powered by Cornhead Lager.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, Monday edition. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Tim Verghese with us from inside Nebraska. Rivals.com, and of course at Tim Verghese on Twitter. Now that Saban's retired, Elijah, are you going to retire Saban calling me an idiot, or is that thing going to live on in infamy?
Oh, it's going to live on for forever.
Okay.
I mean, Saban's one of those like the distinctive people in college football where you always recognize the voice, and even if you don't, it's pretty clear. Schmitty's a great guy. Ain't got a brain.
Ain't got a brain.
You don't even know who Saban is to understand that intro.
No, I mean, and let's just. I have met Saban. Never. So he's talking about probably a third string kicker he didn't like.
I believe, if I remember correctly, it was a third string corner.
Yeah. Catching his ire. Tim Verghese is grinning ear to ear. Catch this live on the stream, Hail Varsity YouTube. Tim, how's the weekend, man? It is camp season and Nebraska assistants out in full force. Let's start there, man. Thanks for joining us, and I know your June's going to get pretty busy, isn't it?
Yes, of course. Kind of took this weekend slow, kind of prepping for these next 3 weeks because, these next 3 weekends are arguably the busiest time of the year, the new recruiting calendar and everything. I mean, Nebraska's going to try, like every program, Nebraska's going to try and get the majority of their recruiting class wrapped up here this summer, and this June is critical for that because they've got, the June 14th and the 21st, the 2 biggest recruiting weekends of the year for them. They've got, by my count, I think we've got 23 plus official visitors between those 2 weekends alone.
That's incredible. And success a summer ago, Tim, for Matt Rule and his approach. A lot of official visits, a lot of one-on-one time and staff time spent by Rule with his strategy in front of some folks, which is great. The reality is you get him in when you can spend a little more time with them, and then hopefully you'll get a thumbs up here this summer for some of the kids that have seen Nebraska on multiple visits, and then they really do keep Nebraska intrigued on their own dime at some point, maybe for a ball game. A little shift than some previous staffs with where Nebraska wants to attack their recruiting and their official visits.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's just, I think part of it is Nebraska wanting that additional time. Part of it is that recruiting calendar, as I mentioned, where all of this is getting to. And it's not necessarily a result of anything. It's just a shift that's kind of happened. I've noticed over the last 2 years or so is a lot of these recruits, especially the up and coming seniors, they want to get their recruitment done by their senior year. They want to go into their senior football season not having to think about, responding to 20, 25 different coaches, try and sort through the different list of offers and figure out which one makes the most sense for them. They just want to play ball, and so what you're starting to see is it makes more sense for both parties, for Nebraska and for the recruit, to just come in the summer, spend a full 3 days with the staff, and, not have to deal with, okay, there's 4 hours in here where I'm going to be sitting in the stands watching a football game, and I don't get to, that's an important thing for these guys. Nebraska wants to sell the stadium atmosphere, but that's 4 to 6 hours of, a 72-hour visit period that these kids are spending essentially with, or 48-hour visit period that these kids are basically spending, not really learning anything about the program beyond, just watching a game.
And not only is this upcoming month with the camps important for the athletes, I think it's also important for the coaches. There's been a couple stories that we've already seen of Nebraska finding some diamond in the rough types during these camps. I mean, you think of James Williams last year. He came in a JUCO camp and it ends up being a monster his first year. You look at Quinn Clark last year as well, a guy that was a little bit off the beaten path, and he came in and impressed in a camp, if I remember correctly. From your experience, Tim, looking around the country, how does Nebraska's reliance on these camps to find some of the 2 and 3 star guys, the diamond in the roughs, compared to the rest of the country? Do you see more of an emphasis on it from this Husker staff?
Oh yeah, they really want to get, they talked about it, in their when the recruiting staff met with the media a couple weeks ago, but they want to get some of their top guys in Lincoln for camps this summer, and last summer it was about getting those 24 recruits in because they were so behind. They were just trying to get caught up. This year, when they say top recruits, they're talking about the 26s and 27s. Like I've said, they're further ahead with the 25 class already. They've got 8 commits. I imagine, and it's not even like a crazy prediction or anything, they're going to clear double-digit commits by the end of this month. And I don't even think, like, they may be even closer to 15 than 10, by the end of June. That's just kind of where the board is at right now. So what they're doing is, and what they're using these camps for, is evaluating some of these like 25s they just want to get a second look at. A good example is Ren Brown. That's an in-state lineman that plays 8-man football. He's coming in on the 14th to camp in hopes of getting an offer. And that's when Nebraska just wants to get eyes on him, see how he moves. He's a guy that, where the O-line board is right now, he's a guy that could get an offer, or Nebraska just be like, hey, you've got good opportunities already from Oregon State and Texas Tech. Go ahead and jump on one of those. If it comes down to it, we can circle back in the fall. I imagine that's how that conversation is going to go. But they're not afraid to offer. I mean, I just had to look it up, the name, because I need to make sure I'm not messing it up. But just today, they're down in Texas right now, the staff is, and they offered a kid, Konstantin Pashos, originally from Germany, moved into the country ahead of the 2023 football season. He plays up in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, one of those Northeast states, at a prep school up there. And he camped in front of the staff today, and he earned an offer. That's a 2025 recruit that Coach Terrence Knight was not afraid to offer. That's a 6'7", 235-pound defensive end that they saw something in, and now they're going to see how it goes. So, but more so than those 25s, like I said, you're going to see a handful of 25 offers. But more realistically, what you're going to see is you're going to see some of their top 26 recruits. Some of the guys in the region. Ian Premer, a Titan down in Kansas. He's a 4-star recruit. He's coming to town for a camp. Jaden McGregor, he's a 4-star athlete out of Iowa. He's coming to town for a camp. So some of the top regional 26s and 27s, they want to get in town. They want to have those guys experience what it's like to be coached by Nebraska staff, and then show them around campus. And it's another opportunity to get them on campus.
Tim Verghese with us, Inside Nebraska Rivals, at Tim Verghese on Twitter is where you follow him. Let's talk about some of the 2025 names, Tim, on Nebraska's board. Let's start with an update. What's your vibes right now on Dawson Merritt?
Yeah, that one's interesting. This is the probably most important week for his recruitment. He's got that Bama OV coming up this weekend, and I expect a decision shortly after. The intel I continue to hear is pro Nebraska, but one thing I would caution people before getting too optimistic here: pretty much every time he made 2 Bama visits this spring. Both times he went to Bama, the intel coming out of both was Bama's the team to beat. Then he came back to Nebraska for the official visit, and over this last month, Nebraska's been able to build off that official visit where they came out as the leader and kind of extend their lead a little bit. But I do wonder what happens, this weekend when he gets the full official visit treatment from Bama. It seems like that staff has finally gotten their feet under them in terms of setting their board and evaluating and everything, and how to recruit to Bama. You're starting to see guys visiting Bama, top recruits visiting Bama, and they're like, hey, this feels like old Bama again. This doesn't feel, when Kalen and the DeBoer staff just got there, it was kind of a new vibe. But now it's starting to feel like, hey, this is Bama. This is what we do. It's starting to feel like Bama again, So I would be cautioned about getting too optimistic with where Nebraska stands right now. Like I said, they're the leader coming out of that last official visit, and that hasn't really changed. I'm sure y'all saw it on Twitter, but his dad was engaging with Cam Taylor-Britt, and Cam Taylor-Britt's an Alabama native that went to Nebraska. So good perspective there that I'm sure is helping him go through this recruitment. But we'll see. I'm as curious as anyone to figure out kind of what he thinks about Nebraska and Bama coming out of this weekend. And I imagine, a commitment in the next 2 weeks, I would imagine, coming out of this visit to Bama this Friday.
So you're not reading too deeply into Dawson Merritt posting the picture of him going between the legs over Raiola on his Instagram story?
I think that was an edit that was sent, but doesn't necessarily mean anything for Nebraska, I would say, because like I said, this weekend I think looms large, and I think if you ask the staff, they would say they're pretty nervous about this coming weekend as well.
How about Mekhi Moore, running back on Nebraska's board, and the other running back, Jamarian Parker? I know the kid out of St. Louis that Nebraska's chasing. What do you know about both these kids?
Yeah, so with Mekhi, that's one that if Nebraska's evaluating, I guess is the best way to put it. I texted back and forth with him last week kind of to figure out what his mindset is going into June. Like I said, Nebraska offered last month, kind of a wild one, considering where I think they still stand with Jamarian Parker and kind of where, most people think they stand with Jamarian Parker. I think they're the team to beat for Jamarian. I think he's making an official visit this month. And I think Nebraska is going to have a chance to kind of solidify their position at the top for him and potentially get him in the class as soon as this month. But the fact that they offered Mekhi, I don't know how much you can read into it because, again, like I said, I think they feel good about where they sit with Parker. I just think this was an offer that EJ Bartel's got a 3-year relationship with the kid, and they feel they have, again, like some type of a diamond in the rough here where it took him an additional year, but he's kind of developed into a big, strong running back that can play in the Big Ten. He's like 6'1", 205, big physical, like runs fast for even that size. But yeah, again, where I think Nebraska stands with him, and I apologize for rambling a little bit here, but I'll get to it. But he's coming in this weekend for an unofficial visit, and basically what he told me is and he's going to camp in front of the staff as well. So depending on how that camp and that visit goes, he's planning to return for an official visit the following week. And again, what that sounds like to me, and what the read I get is Rule and the staff want to see him in person, figure out if this is a committable offer or not. And if it's a committable offer, they'll get him in town the next weekend for an official visit, try and lock him in. If not, they'll tell him, hey, we're going to evaluate other options because we have other options and you should probably do the same.
Tim, one last name for you here, about 30 seconds. Christian Jones, I know he picked up an Auburn offer last week. He's going to be off to USC this weekend. Any new updates in the recruitment of Christian Jones?
Yeah, real quick there. He set 3 official visits. He's at USC, Oklahoma, and Nebraska this week or this month. USC is the school, I would say, is probably the one to keep an eye on. Obviously, can't count out Oklahoma. They've done a good job with recruiting linebackers and recruiting linebackers and developing linebackers. So I'd keep an eye on both those programs. But I still feel good about where Nebraska stands. I'm actually going out to see him on Wednesday, so I'll have a more fleshed out update for y'all next week on him.
That'll be good. Tim Verghese with us inside Nebraska Rivals Network at Tim Verghese on Twitter. Tim, good stuff, man. Thanks so much, and we'll check in about a week.
Yes, sir.
There he is, Tim Verghese. Good stuff. We'll hear from Will Bolt on the way next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Good stuff from Tim Verghese, and you want to get that recruiting rundown. Tim and the podcast portion of today's show will be in segment form on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, the audio side of things. We'll have the video posted as well on Hail Varsity YouTube. 489-1240 numbers to get in. We'll get back to some baseball. And Charlie McBride going to try and run Charlie down here in about 20 minutes or so. Our Blackshirt Hour in Hour 2 with Charlie McBride and Jay Moore. So that to look forward to, 489-1240 or Chris at HailVarsity.com. Keep the comments coming with your stream participation on the YouTube channel as well. KG checks in, a kinder, gentler version of KG.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Colorado wrapped their recruiting in February. And we'll get to Will Bolton. I want to talk to Charlie about this and get Jay's take as well. But Joel Klatt, Elijah, again, we're big Joel Klatt fans. We love trying to catch up with him at Big Ten Media Days. And Joel Klatt, one of the OGs. We're talking 15, 20 years ago where Klatt was a weekly guy, which was cool. And Klatt's, of course, your number one college football analyst. And this is from Husker Game Day. Twitter handle put this out a couple hours ago and just reiterating it. Joel Klatt lists Nebraska, Colorado as one of his 10 games that'll shape the 2024 college football season. And looking at it, if Nebraska wins, that's a very different type of shaping. It'd be their toughest test. And when it looks to projecting out a 7-0 number going into Ohio State, I'm not laughing at this logic. It's great. But 7-0 hinging on Colorado. And we've talked about this quite a bit on the weekend edition of Hail Varsity. And from time to time, just the magnitude, not only the stage when we got the TV times, Elijah, but the impact of what a big game win. A big game win can do for Nebraska football and Matt Rhule. And listen, if it doesn't happen, I don't worry about it being a 2019 situation. Nebraska, I think, will have embedded in their DNA resiliency and kind of non-front running. I think that's what Matt Rhule and his staff are about, because what's he talk about? He talks about, specifically, go back, case in point, like one of his last pressers, how's my quarterback's body language and what's he acting like when things go poorly? Everyone's got a smile on their face, don't they, when it's all good? Mm-hmm. When you're 24-29 for 3 bills, 3 touchdowns, no picks. But when it goes stanky, how do you come back from it? And does it linger? Does it dwell?
It's the difference between Colorado last year between weeks 1 and 4 and weeks 5 and 12.
Thank you.
Big old difference in the mood of that football team. And it really affected their results in the field. I don't think Colorado was as good as they thought they were weeks 1 through 4, but I think they were better than they played weeks 5 through 12. But that mindset of whenever things started to go awry, that team kind of fell apart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were. It's how you finish, not how you start. And they started on fire. They were the national darling. And what you got to be cautious about if you're Nebraska is that greatest thing since sliced bread / #new bandwagon team, the it team, that trendy team. Can you handle all of that periphery crap? And I think Rhule's really good at being able to handle that because he's hammering home 5 and 7.
Well, you don't judge a team, I think, based on how they're performing when things are going well. You judge a team based on how they're performing when things are going against them. Like, look at the Husker Baseball team in the Big Ten tournament. That's why we bought into what that team was doing headed into the regional. It's because, man, whenever things weren't going their way in Omaha, they banded together and played with their backs against the wall. Like, that, as a whole, that entire run through the Big Ten tournament changed my perception of what this year is, regardless of what happened in the region. We'll get back to baseball here in just a second. But, like...
No, it's a mirror image.
That's why I don't think I'm going to judge this Husker football team based on what happens against Colorado. Like, assuming they win, if they win. I'm not going to judge them based on what happens there. I'm going to judge them based on what happens.
How are they the week after they lose that first game?
Yeah, how are they going to perform on a Friday night against Illinois whenever you're starting to look ahead? Hey, we're really feeling ourselves here. We got Ohio State coming up in a couple weeks. How are you going to perform in that moment? How do you perform if you drop a game that you should win? You know what everyone's talking about is we're 5-0, we lose a game to Indiana.
Handling success.
How do you respond in that moment? I mean, that's why it's so difficult for me to say, hey, if Nebraska wins against Colorado, they can go 7-0. It's not about how you perform when things are going your way. It's about how you perform whenever the chips are stacked against you and it feels like the world's crumbling in around you. That's where your true character is revealed.
And last thought here on Klatt. We'll get Coach McBride's take in a moment. But the bigger picture part of this Colorado springboard is just teams in the running for the Big Ten in the playoff, right? It's a non-conference game, but it's a national perception moment where the eyes of college football, a third of them could be on you. A third of the nation could be on you, right? If week one goes pretty awesome with this new freshman phenom that plays a lot like Patrick Mahomes. So I'm anxious to see if things can keep progressing here for Nebraska. Not only that Colorado moment, but how do you handle it? How do you move forward? And are you part of that playoff discussion since it is 12? Because you're probably going to get a minimum of 3. And could you be that fourth option if you have a really strong season?
Putting the cart in front of the horse.
I know. I'm going off of Joel Klatt. It's talking season, Elijah. It's okay. Let's hear from Will Bolt and a thought from Will here on the next step for the baseball program.
I think, we're going to have probably for the first time in a while a pretty good group of returning players that have tasted a high level of success and that are going to be hungry for more. So I think that's really important. Again, it's our job as coaches is to put the best talent around the guys that return because it makes them better. And so we're going to be doing that this summer, trying to put together the best roster possible. And, and the guys that are coming back are going to go play summer ball. And the guys that aren't going to go play summer ball are going to be getting bigger, faster, stronger in the weight room. So for us to get where we want to get to, we just got to keep improving, and again, we're going to continue to push the envelope to get to where we want to get to. And like I said, only one team can be happy in the end. But I can tell you this, I'm thankful for this group. And I look forward to continuing to push these guys to become the best version of who they possibly can be.
So well put by Will Bolt. A quick thought, if we have time, with where it fell apart, cut 3 against Florida.
We played well in one of 3 facets. Like I said, we swung the bats well, but we didn't pitch or play defense really. I honestly, we right when we'd get some momentum offensively, we just didn't get the shutdown inning. That's kind of what it boiled down to. So we weren't able to keep the momentum in our dugout. And our pitching staff's done a fantastic job all year long of doing that. And just today, too many balls over the middle of the plate for a good lineup. And probably my only regret is that the rain came and Cal Freilich didn't get to continue to pitch.
It's Will Bolt. We'll wind down this first hour. Good to have you on a Monday. It's Hail Varsity, and we're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, Monday edition. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride coming up here in this second hour, the Blackshirt Hour. Follow that up with Jay Moore. Excited tomorrow. Mitch Sherman and Matt Schick going to join us. Get their thoughts on some Big Red topics and some college baseball. Reminder about buckling up. Your driving is your full-time job. Phones, food, and friends need your attention when you're not driving. Stop the distractions. Just drive. The message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Do you shut folks down in the Elijah Mobile from eating in your car? Were you that guy in high school?
No. I'm in don't be a pig mode. If you're going to eat in my car, there better not be like lettuce and everything everywhere.
So you would not be open to. I shut Junior down. Occasionally, we'll make a fast food, like midnight fast food run, once a month perhaps. And if I'm driving, he ain't opening that bag at all in my car. If in his car's, I don't know. I've been in it a few times, and it smells pleasant, quite frankly. But it's the smell of, well, shame. The new candle fragrance brought to you by one Elijah Herbel.
Coming soon.
But other than that, like, it's just something my wife and my kid will, I think, eat in each other's car. And we've been lucky there's been no fumbles of fries or anything between the seats. But growing up, my mom had this little Honda. It's called the Pigmobile by my father. Because, I mean, there's probably I don't know if the car's in existence anymore, but at the time of its sale, there might have been 2 or 3 Big Macs or McNuggets or something melted into the seat.
See, my thing, I'm going to go out. I keep my car clean. I vacuum it every week or two. So, like, hey, if there's a little piece of lettuce or a French fry that you drop that you don't notice, okay. I'm more like, hey, if I, next time I get in my car, I find a McDonald's wrapper on the floor of my car, like, you've lost the privilege now. You're not going to eat in my car anymore. It's pretty simple. I mean, maybe this is just me.
No,
the wrapper, whenever you're done with it, goes back into the bag. Mm-hmm. That is now a trash receptacle, if you will. I don't want it in my doors, on the floor. That's where I'm going to draw the line. Hey, you can eat in my car, and if you drop a bit of your burrito, pick it up with a napkin. There's usually napkins in the fast food bag. Pick it up, be respectful. Just don't be a pig. It's pretty simple.
A year ago, we were coming back from the Black Hills for a baseball tournament, and Junior and I, we had, I don't know, and it was travel ball, so you packed the cooler. That cooler had a lot of beer in it for the tailgating between games. And I don't know how many beer cans. I mean, you probably could have made a pretty penny from the Seinfeld episode of Kramer and Newman taking the glass bottles to recycle. But we were cleaning all these beer cans out, and him and I were just laughing. It's like, we leave these for Mom, and she gets pulled over. It's the ultimate setup. Ma'am, you blew a 0.0. Your blood test came back negative.
It's 9 a.m. on a Tuesday.
But there's 3 cases of Coors in your back seat. Can you explain this? Yeah, my husband's an a-hole. Duly noted. Have a nice day. Mr. Blackshirt on the way. Charlie McBride's coming up. Hour 2 with you on Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
This is Christian Peter. I'm sorry, but the stories I have about Charlie are not appropriate for the public.
The right case of the Mondays. It's Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride, on Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you. It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We're going to try and run down Charlie McBride. We'll try and get Coach on the horn. Really good story by Sam McEwen of the Omaha World Herald when it comes to, I really love his Monday rewinds. And you hear him Monday mornings with Hurrdat Sports with Damon and Ravi. So we'll dive into some development thoughts and recruiting. 'Tis the camp season for Nebraska. Nebraska had some hosted camps. Nebraska will be hosting quite a few kids at their own camps. 489-1240. 489-1240. Number to get in. And the word from KG, Florida beating Oklahoma State in the Stillwater Regional. So the Gators moving on. So that is good. We'll try and run Coach down here in a moment. Jay Moore coming up here in Hour 2, which is great. So we'll check in with Jay in a moment. But yeah, Tim Verghese with us in that first hour with Nebraska's recruiting prowess and targets and trying to replicate what they did a June ago with 12 commitments that signed for this 2024 class. We say hi to Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride, a Monday with Charlie. Coach, it's good to spend some time with you. Thanks for joining us.
Well, it's been a little tough week. It's been there's too many people that are disappearing from our lives, and so we've been going to funerals.
Oh, Coach, I'm so sorry.
Bad.
Sorry to hear that.
But we're doing good, and we're doing some other things with the house, and changing banks and doing. That's even crazier. You want to try that sometime?
I'm supposed to. My brother is the financial wizard in the family, and my wife and I have never had a joint account. That process needs to happen, and her and I are both digging in. Well, I'm not changing my bank. Oh, I'm not changing. So we are at a stalemate there, Coach. So I can only imagine the process. That's why I've not changed bank and joined accounts.
You guys still trust banks? I have my money in a...
We have one that's that way. He flew in here for about a week. That's how long it took us to sink in our heads what we were doing. But I mean, they're all honest people, and that. So you got to be careful.
See, I just keep. I mean, working in radio, I keep all $150 I've saved up in a pillowcase.
It's all in nickels for Elijah. And when he's bad, we beat him with the bag of nickels. Right?
Only when I'm late on Saturday morning.
Yeah, I love it, Coach. A lot going on this time of year. And I wanted to get your thoughts on just what Nebraska's doing on the recruiting front from an organization standpoint. You've got a big staff. You've got a guy who embraces and loves recruiting, loves evaluating and getting to know kids in Matt Rule. And it's full-on camp season as Nebraska has some of their coaches down in Texas. Nebraska's going to be getting up close and personal with a number of kids this June as those kids come to camp. And I know that is how you and Coach Osborne and the Nebraska teams and staff really were difference makers, not only with your evaluation, but also the development phase. And it sounds like that's an emphasis for Nebraska to be a development program, a program that really evaluates well, and that's the lifeblood, isn't it, of your football program, the recruiting, and then what you do with those recruits.
It was a good thing for us when we were in state, and we had some out of state kids, but we had them in camp, and our camp was 4 days probably, and almost 5 days I think is when you count the half here and a half there at the front and the back of it. You get to know the kids, to get to see them, and we offered some kids in camp, just like I'm sure they're doing. We were doing all the time in them and finding out a lot about their physical abilities. And we could look at the junior kids. We weren't as active with the juniors as they are now. And I think that's really good. When you have more people, we didn't have enough people to do what they're doing, I think. And the rules have changed. Now there's more people allowed, I think, on the road, and we were only allowed 7. And at first, if one guy got off the road, they didn't even allow another guy to take his place, and then they changed that rule so a guy could take his place. And then it got where you could actually take a coach off the road and put the academic people on the road with you, or Boyd. I don't know how much, but it was more the academic thing that we pushed, with the families, and that helped a lot. And I think that Tom's attitude toward, how he took, care. And I don't want to say take care of kids, but how he managed his program with him being so knowledgeable about the families, about the kids. He knew every kid's name, and I know that he worked. He really worked hard at that, and that was important because that players I think pay attention to a lot of the little things that you do that some people don't do, and I don't know what they don't do exactly, but it was ours was so much more sophisticated than it was, say, at Wisconsin or Arizona State. I don't think it was their fault. I think it was how recruiting progressed, how it got to be. Even now, it's more open, I think. I mean, we've even had days where we could only talk to the kid 3 times in the whole year and the whole recruiting process. There were some rules made that were they changed all the time, and that really kind of hurt. Right now, they've, with the conferences going, I'm sure there might be some rule changes, and they'll all have to get together and decide what they want to do with all of this stuff. And when they do that, it's probably going to be 2 or 3 years to get it all straightened out.
Mm-hmm. Charlie McBride's with us. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're talking summer camps, recruiting, and being able to identify that talent. Coach, when it came to the size and speed and measurables and all that, there's a bar to hit. But Nebraska was so good at finding the guys, and I want to give 2 names that guys weren't highly recruited, but man, they were great, great, great players. They developed, and there was something internally with those kids I think you saw specifically on the defensive side. That's Christian, Peter, and Jared Tomich, 2 guys that I watched growing up, and I know you're super close with, but both those guys weren't highly regarded, recruited, but you saw something in them, and, man, they were difference makers for your defense.
Well, both of them they had a special attitude about working at things and accomplishing things, and it wasn't always just the football field. Mm-hmm. It was, and Jared was really good with younger people and helped them in the weight rooms and did things like that. And he was strong, man. I mean, He was a strong kid. I mean, he's it's that way. And Christian was also he was self-made. I mean, he worked hard at it way before we even got him. And so there were a lot of those kids that did those kind of things. And you could tell by their attitude, and if you talk to their parents a little bit, you'll find out that what the coach is saying is probably about 80% to 100% right. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, the coach tries to butter things up, and the parents will be really honest with you about how they feel that they want their son to do this, but. And some parents would say he's got to make his own decision and dig his own ditch. You know what I mean? And that's kind of a saying my dad used to tell me. He said, "You got to dig your own ditch." And I'll tell you if I don't believe you, but that doesn't mean you don't have to do what I say.
Sure.
If you believe in something. And I think a lot of kids are mature enough, and I've been in homes where the parents said, "He's 18 years old. He's not old enough to make a decision." And when you hear that, it scares you.
I bet.
Here's a poor kid. He's 6'6", 300 pounds, and it's like you look at him, you think, well, he must not have a brain in his head or something. But you think, what is going on? And then I found out this is the truth. I found out that she wasn't drinking water. She was drinking vodka. And this is true.
This is the mother on an in-home. This is the mom on an in-home.
Went out, got another glass of water and came back, and I remember the father was with the Army Corps of Engineers, and he didn't say one word the whole time. She was boss.
And she's drinking his vodka.
I made the mistake of saying, well, I know he's going to make up his own mind. And she jumped right out of that chair and told me he's only 18. He's not going to make up his own mind. He doesn't know what to do. And finally, she just said, we're sending them to KU, and that's where we went to school. So you get a little bit of that once in a while, but it always ends up where, Nate Turner, for example, his dad wanted him to go to Notre Dame. Mother said he can go where he wants to, behind his back. Mm-hmm. So you got little family quarrels there, too. So, there's a lot of things you have to kind of tread lightly. But when we went out in the state, we looked for things that we thought, and Boyd was real good at, and his guys were real good at saying, this guy, we can do something with him, Mm-hmm. And so if you get a kid that has height and weight and runs, can do a lot of the things he's going to get better at, then that's, then he's the taker, And then a lot of those kids wanted to go to school here at Nebraska, and so they didn't take the scholarships at, at other universities, smaller schools usually, and, in the area. But they always knew that if they came here and they didn't get the job done, that we would help them if they wanted to keep playing football, we'd help them out. And I'd say that 90% of them wanted to come to school here in the first place.
Coach,
just to get education.
Mm-hmm. Coach, whenever you had, say, a couple of guys that you were deciding between, guys that you all thought could make it at Nebraska, but you weren't quite sure which one to go for, were there any intangibles that you look for, stuff that was off the field? Obviously, you look for the athletic traits, guys that are big, guys that can run, but was there any off-the-field intangible stuff you like to look for in guys as well that showed you this guy can be a Cornhusker?
Well, a lot of times kids were, they were worked in boys and girls clubs and stuff like that you didn't know about. I've had a couple of kids go where I failed, and it was about 2 weeks before they actually did come, and I found out they're, working at Boys and Girls Club for the last 3 years, and doing stuff like that. And, Steve Warren has got a program going down there that's, amazing. I mean, what he's done with kids and given them the opportunity, I think that adds to a little bit of his. To me, he's played for us. He knows what it takes. Mm-hmm. He was a great player for us, and he got hurt. He tore his quadricep almost in half, I guess, up at Green Bay, which ended his career. And but he's done an unbelievable job for a lot of those kids that come to his camps and stuff like that. Dan Minucci, who is a guy out in Arizona that I know that you may have heard of, is a quarterback guy. He's had a lab. He was a Kansas State quarterback back in the day, and he handles that. And he's had quite a few quarterbacks that have started at UCLA, SC. All over the place. And so a lot of those guys you listen to. And he'll have maybe 15 guys that'll be in each one of his labs. I think he has them at different times because of the age group. And but he's a radio announcer and in sports and things like that. So a lot of times you take in other people's advice that you trust.
That's big.
And, with players. And I know that there's been times when our coaches have turned players down. And I've said, hey, I see things in them I like, and I'll take them. And I've heard Tom tell me, he said, now you're going to have to turn loose a couple of these guys that are really, you think are really good if we take this guy, and took them, and they ended up being players. So, and that was just because what I saw. I didn't know the person. I just saw him on film. That's the only far as I could go. Now, the other part, the character part and the grade part and all that stuff has to be done by the person in that area. And I got to trust him,
Coach McBride with us here on Hail Varsity. Coach, this was fun to chat and get a little bit of a look behind the curtain at the recruiting process. We'll catch up with you next Monday, and always love spending a few minutes with you today. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you, Coach.
I'll talk to you next week. Okay. Thanks, guys.
All-State, 2-year starter, and rush in for the Big Red, an NFL vet.
Is Dudeness or Duder or, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
It's Blackshirt Jay Moore with Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and we welcome in Blackshirt Husker NFLer Jay Moore at Jay Moore 44. It's been a while as Bird back at it. We had last Monday off, and the countdown to kickoff is commencing with No more Nebraska-related sports, Jay Bird, to follow. A little bit of a tear in my right cheek. That said, I can't wait for the fall and football. How are you doing, man? Tell us about the week.
It was good. Just kind of getting back in the swing of things. Was on a little vacation with the family, and then before that, I was up in Philadelphia playing in the USGA floorball event that myself and one of my good buddies, Dave Easley, we qualified for this event back in last August, believe it or not. And so was in Philly for a few days. Wish we could have stayed longer. Unfortunately, didn't play well enough to make the cut, to make the match play portion of it. But I tell you what, we had a blast. Hung out with a good bunch of awesome people from Nebraska as well that qualified for the same event, and then met my family in Destin for a few days as well after that. So it's been zero complaints. I've been plenty busy and got to spend plenty of time with friends and family. So last week and a half has been it's honestly tough to beat.
Mm-hmm. You had a tan through all of that? You don't look too much more tan.
I tan rather easily, but there was a lot of SPF 70 was applied on the golf course for 5 straight days, and been in beach for another few days. So there was a lot of sunscreen applied to the face, and be better safe than sorry.
I think what Jay just said there was stay tan so you don't have to get tan.
That's my motto, dude. I'm trying to go 24/7 with the old fat tan. Now, Bird is not worried about table muscle. I want to stay a little bit leaner, but that's just me being absolutely petty and vanity driven. Jay Moore with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. Jay, college football is getting closer, and Matt Rule has done some things a little differently, and he did a great job last June when it comes to recruiting. I think he landed 14 commits for Nebraska. You know how some of those true freshmen contributed. I think there's an emphasis as well from Rule in the middle of the field, right? The meat and potatoes portion of football in the Big Ten. And the tale a lot of times is told with how your interior line on both lines, your linebackers and your running game, that dictates a lot of what you can do, either stopping someone from running all over you or being able to get downhill, control the clock, and be physical. Is that going to be, I don't want to say measuring stick, but is that something you're going to keep an eye on moving forward? We know Nebraska was better at stopping the run last year. That there's an emphasis in that fourth quarter to run the football. But as you look at the Big Red, does their success depend on what happens between the hashes?
I think it has to. And I think as long as this game's played, that's where the game's won. And it's won on the line of scrimmages. It's run on the offensive line and defensive line. The offensive line sets the tone for the rest of your offense. You have a good offensive line that can run the football. It makes everything around you better. It makes your running backs better. It buys you more time in the passing game. It just opens everything up. So that's always going to be the most important. Vice versa defensively. If you're good up front, you're call it your 5 guys essentially that are around the line of scrimmage. If those guys are some of your best players in your defense, just going to make the rest of call it 6 guys behind you that much better. Your linebackers are going to be a little bit better. You're going to be able to play more aggressively. Things are going to be more defined. There's not going to be a whole lot of gray area in the defense where guys don't really know what's going on. So I think, and frankly, that's what has hurt Nebraska the last 10 plus years is the inconsistencies at opposite lines, and it's getting better. I think you can honestly say now that the strength of Nebraska's team coming into 2024 on the defense is guys on the defensive line, and obviously with Nash and Tyler Robinson, and honestly a bunch of young freshmen that played last year as well. You look at the offensive line again, guys who have played a lot of football. Arguably, some of your better players are on the offensive line, and we just haven't had that. I think that we've had good players, but there's been injuries. There's just been inconsistencies. There's just been too many highs and lows at the offensive line position, but I think it's getting cleaned up. I think it's going to be one of the strong position groups of this team. And when you can honestly say that, that's when wins start to happen. That's when you start winning all these close one-score games. That's when you kind of get over this hurdle. You get this monkey off your back of not making a bowl game for 7 years. All these things is because, you know what? When it comes down to winning football games, especially in the Big Ten, in the fourth quarter, you got to do things that teams know you're going to do, and that's run the football. And it's winning the 4-minute drill. It's ending the first half strong, and then starting the third quarter even stronger. So you got to be able to just say there's no secret, there's no trickery, there's no anything. It's like, man, it's 3rd and 3, we're running it. You know we're running it, but you're not going to be able to stop it. And that's the beauty of what Nebraska football used to be, was that happened year in and year out. So I think for as long as this game's played, it's one between the hashes, it's one on the offensive line, it's one on the defensive line. And I think finally I feel comfortable enough to say that the strength of our team is now being developed at your offensive defensive lines finally.
It's Jay Moore with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Jay, I want to zoom in here quickly on the defensive line. The two guys you mentioned, Nash and Ty. A lot's been made of them this offseason. Important to have Ty come back for another season. I want to get your thoughts. So how do those guys take the next step to go from great? Because I think they were great last season. How do they take the next step up to elite? What are some little things that they can add to their toolbox, they can add to their game to take that next step and become, I don't want to say unblockable, because I think that gets thrown around a little bit too much, but what next step can they take to make the next leap into guys that are potential high NFL draft picks?
Game wrecker, right?
Yeah, it's always consistency is one. You can do it, one game. You're able to make a few plays and get some momentum going and get your energy going. But especially when you're feeling good early in the year, but can you continue to do it when teams are highlighting you? Teams are maybe setting two guys against Ty or Nash, whoever it is. You're getting double teamed. Are you making I think the other thing is you're making the rest of the guys around you better too. And when you're getting double teamed, you're going to make the rest of your guys around you better, because they're going to get one-on-one situations, and you should win in one-on-one situations 9 times out of 10. So there's a lot. I mean, if you really wanted to get kind of macro and look at the fine details of it, it's understanding run concepts and blocking schemes and what they're trying to do to you, understanding stances of offensive linemen and maybe developing another pass rush here and there. There's a little things, and pass pro, understanding what they're trying to do in pass pro. What side's the center going to slide to? Are you going to be on the 3-man or the 2-man side? And understanding when you see all that in the field too, is being able to take control of it and letting Coach Wyatt or Coach Knight let you take control of it and switch things up too, and being like, hey, we got this game going. This is not going to work when you're running into a 3-man slide protection. We got to switch it up to get going to the other side. I think that's really when you start taking it next level. They got all the tools, the physical tools to do what you need to do, but it's gonna happen up here. And when the game just slows down a little bit more, and you're able to just kind of play that cat and mouse or checkers type versus chess type of game out there, when you really have a full understanding what offenses are doing to you, that's when they can really take it to another level and honestly do it at a more consistent level as well.
Jay, as you've seen their careers progress, what are you most impressed with Polar Bear and Ty? Yes, coming back is super important. It's unselfish. That being said, I mean, we remember the buzz when they got here, and you're now a season away from realizing that top of the mountain type feeling. I mean, they've been climbing each year. They've been getting better each year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for Nash, one thing, obviously his athletic ability for a guy that size, you see it on him being able to transition into the wrestling, in the off season, but his ability to move as a 0 technique or a 1 technique, a nose guard, that can't be taught. I think you can be developed a little bit, but through the strength conditioning program and just things like that. But I think that is one area where he's vastly improved. I think Ty's where he's really improved his consistency. I think Ty always had all the bells and the whistles and the ability to make himself the player he is now, but he dealt with inconsistencies. I think he was a little too hard on himself when things weren't going well. He probably had a little bit of feeling sorry for yourself too much. And I think he's progressed and definitely matured to know that you're not going to, you're playing, there's 85 other scholarships on those other teams too. So you're playing against really good talent, and sometimes you're not going to win every battle. You're sure as hell going to try, but understanding expectations and understanding, just the ins and out of this game. And I think him just being more consistent, managing his expectations, managing his emotions to be able to attack it day in and day out and be as consistent as possible. So, last year was as good a year as he's ever had. And, if he just gets 1% better, 0.5% better every day and during the fall, the sky's the limit for him. And same with Nash. These guys are you can build a 3-3-5 defense around those two guys, and you start plugging and playing with, Princewell and Cam Lenhartz and, just everybody around that. This defense is gonna be tough to deal with.
Jay, I know it's kind of rare for interior defensive linemen unless you're true rare specimens to be first-round draft picks, but could you see those guys being high draft picks if they have a good season?
Yeah, I think I don't know, going in their senior year where they're kind of projected. I know there's data out there that agents and everybody else can get. I'd see, if they have a good. Your biggest thing is that Nebraska somehow gets 8 wins. They can. I think they're the worst. I think at the worst, they will go no lower than a 4th round pick, at the worst. Now they improve, and you're competing to maybe for a playoff spot late in the year, and it's just the consistency with it. And those guys could be a 2nd or 3rd as well. But I think at the worst, I don't think these guys are going no later than the 4th round. I think they have a really good year, maybe late first, but I think a 2nd to 3rd round into the 4th is probably a really, really good spot for these guys. And I know they want to go first round, but that's tough, man. That's hard. There's only 32 teams in that area. It has to fit with who wants you and where they're picking. So. I'm not an expert. I'm not Mel Kiper on this type of stuff, but I think just with how they're built, body size and everything like that, and how they played last year, and as long as they stay healthy, I think they won't be the first night, but they'll definitely probably be that second day type of pick.
It's Jay Moore with us here, Hail Varsity Radio, Blackshirt Monday at JMoore44, where you can find him on Twitter. Watch him, Big Red wrap up during the season, and of course, thoughts on recruiting with Big Red wrap-up as well. So we're chewing on this a little bit with all the FPI data out. And, Nebraska is in the single-digit percentages for a playoff appearance. They're kind of hand in hand, but what's a more difficult accomplishment, playoff berth or getting to Indy? For Nebraska, because you get to Indy, you're going to be a playoff team. I get it, but playoffs nothing to sneeze at. There's 1 of 12, and then there's just 1 of 2, and the Big Ten's a bear, man.
No, it's going to be tough. You're looking at obviously Ohio State kind of being the top dog, but you got Oregon and Michigan's still going to be tough to deal with. Washington, USC. Penn State, this is going to be a gamut to run through. Wisconsin's going to be much improved. I don't know. It's hard. I know, you win the conference, you're setting yourself up for that first round bye. But again, it's like, man, I think honestly probably winning the conference is a more difficult task. It's probably if they somehow made it, you're probably looking at a rematch with Ohio State. If they somehow, I don't foresee it to happen, but it did happen. But I think trying to win the Big Ten is, sheesh, that's like.
John Cook's right, isn't he? It's tough. It's easier to win a national championship than win the Big Ten, and that's volleyball.
Yeah, you're definitely right. There's so much. There's just with the expansion conference, there's just so much talent in these programs, man. It's going to be tough, especially, adding Oregon and USC and Washington after. I mean, I don't know what to expect with Washington after DeBoer's left, but they're still going to be good. They're still going to be competitive, and going to Seattle and playing in November and October, it's going to be tough. So, yeah, I honestly think making a playoff and maybe even winning a playoff game is probably easier than winning the Big Ten Conference up right now in my mind.
When you think about it, like if Nebraska were to make Indy this year, they'd have to run the table aside from Ohio State in my mind.
Just Oregon, I'm going through some of the schedules, all right, and Oregon's schedule is brutal. Ohio State's schedule isn't fun, but both those teams are pretty capable of handling it. You also have a regular season matchup as Ohio State goes to Oregon in Week 7. Mm-hmm. Listen to this. I have no earthly idea what your SEC champ is going to look like. I do know this
I have a feeling it's probably going to be Georgia.
Well, but same here. We all say, hey, give me the dogs. Well, here's Georgia's schedule this season. They're at Texas. They're at Bama. They're at Ole Miss. They're at Clemson. They host Tennessee. And that's just like the 5 games that have been highlighted under the top 20 games of the year. There's a 5th of those. Oklahoma's on there like 38 times. And I don't know that that's a good thing for Oklahoma as they make the move. Georgia could be a 9-3 SEC champ and get a bye in a 2 seed.
Yeah, easily. This is like the AFC.
That's
North
murder.
battle.
That schedule's awesome and terrible.
Yeah, Alabama's. I was chit-chatting with a good friend from Alabama when I was in Philly, and we were just looking at their schedule. And it's just crazy. I mean, Bama's at Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's their non-con. Yeah,
and it's just the SEC is just, you add Texas or Texas Oklahoma to this now. It's just a meat grinder of these, between the Big Ten and SEC. Man, it's just brutal. There's no weeks off. And now I know SEC still utilizing the 8-game schedule and get the damn near a bye week. Late November.
Yep, Sanford comes to town for everybody.
Yeah, so, but it's still, it's the days of going undefeated and being an undefeated conference championship. It's becoming less and less, and it really doesn't matter anymore. It's just you just got to get in. Hopefully, you get a bye. But even though you just look back to NFL, I mean, teams that get the first round bye a lot of times don't have success either. It's those teams that keep playing and stay hot and get momentum going, or the teams that have been most successful in years past. So I tell you what, this year is we don't know what, because we never had a year like this, right? With the playoff and the conference expansion. So it's going to be fun to finally see it all unfold here. Guys, it's already June, so just a few months away.
Jay Moore is with us, Hail Varsity Radio, Blackshirt Husker, NFLer. Jay will wind it down, and the weekend looks like what? Are you swinging the clubs again, or are you just taking a little bit of a break? How would you feel about a friend of yours shooting a 102 at a local course, and he feels good about that?
No, the clubs will not be getting put away. It's just kind of getting into the crazy competitive golf schedule. So I got another tournament this weekend, just a local one here in Grand Island. The Riverside Country Club puts on a really good golf tournament that Tom Dinsdale helps put on, sponsors. So I'll be out there for a couple days playing, and then I got almost something, seems like every week to get ready here to, through June, July, August, and hopefully able to qualify for some other events here late in the fall. That's the plan. Just trying to get better every day. That 0.5%, 1% better every day. Just like Nash and Ty, man. Just trying to get 1% better and see where the chips fall.
So Jay will not be going to the Lord of the Rings extended edition movie marathon in theaters this weekend, because
he'd go to scare some people.
Nope. I will definitely not be attending. attending that matinee.
He's biting his tongue.
Yeah,
he wants to go full ogre mode here.
There's a lot of other things I want to say right now.
Ogre from Revenge of the Nerds.
Yeah, that's not in my repertoire of plans during the summer. Oh boy!
I want Jay to show up in an Adams sweatshirt with the sleeves cut off, just screaming nerds.
Yeah. Listen, Lord of the Rings, I watched them. I haven't seen them all. I've watched a couple of them. I think it's funny. I think I was in college, and my roommate, Stu Bradley, was a huge Lord of the Rings fan. We snuck in, what's the movie theater over there by the mall?
East Park.
Yeah, we snuck into that one, and the place was
How do you
packed.
two sneak
I had no
in
idea
anywhere?
what I was getting myself into. It was like a 3.5 hour movie.
Yep.
I'm like, what are we doing right now?
The extended editions are even longer. We're talking 4+.
No, thank you. I'm out.
Tap it out. Jay will check in with you next Monday. Thanks again.
Yep, sounds good, boys.
Good to always spend time with Jay Moore. I was going to throw out the 10th and O Street movie theater that burned down, but that's not the theater he was talking about sneaking into.
Starship? Is that what it was? No, what was it?
No, it was also a bookstore.
We're talking recently. Yeah, okay.
I just like, huh? What? Oh yeah, that one.
I was like 12. I never got to visit it. They never let me in.
Kid, go away.
Doing the old trench coat, standing on your friend's shoulders.
Wrong spot for a trench coat, my friend. Wrong spot. We'll say goodbye to this Monday edition. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, make sure you get the podcast, download, subscribe, and give us a review. Good, bad, ugly, we'll take it. With Hail Varsity Radio, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play for the audio. Video portion get posted for you in a bit on Hail Varsity YouTube. Thumbs up to Elijah for that. And follow on Twitter at HVarsity Radio. At Herbal Essence for Elijah's Twitter. And at Schmidt_radio for me. You had a really good posting when it comes to spelling over the weekend.
It was a struggle this weekend, apparently.
I know, and you referenced it back to last Friday's second ever Hail Varsity. Spelling bee. There's spelling bee.
There's the word.
I was reading a headline, actually, that just kind of blew me up. Larry Allen passing away at the age of 52. Yeah,
while on family vacation.
That sucks.
How horrible.
I love that Dallas, and I'm not a huge Cowboys guy, but that 90s Dallas O-line was fun.
And that video that will live on forever for me with Larry Allen is that video from his rookie year where he chases down the linebacker from the Saints who picked off, I don't even know who the quarterback was that year. It was probably Aikman.
It's Aikman.
Picks him off, and he chases him down from behind at 330 pounds. Just so ahead of his time in terms of athleticism and power at the offensive line position. One of the best from his era, and we'll honestly say one of the best of all time.
Mm-hmm.
That 700-pound bench press video that goes around from the Cowboys facility, still ridiculous. But anyway, back to the spelling bee. Made the unfortunate mistake of spelling Gabe Swanson's name with an O instead of an E. I caught it pretty quickly. I don't pay for Twitter on principle. I think that's wrong to do. Therefore, I don't. So I don't have the ability to go through and edit my tweets. So I did say it's just been a rough weekend of spelling for me, especially with names. Swanson's name is not Eastern European in origin, which made it a little tougher for me.
You shouldn't go Samsonite. Dumb and Dumber. Mary Swanson.
I need to rewatch that movie, I guess. Mm-hmm. I watched it back in the day, like early high school, and some of your references they went over my head there. And
no, that's okay.
Bad.
That's okay. You know what's going over the
NBA. I need to be better. I know it's one of your
What
favorites.
the hell's the NBA doing? Like I mean, we've had a delay, no basketball over the weekend,
mm-hmm.
and it's not till Thursday.
Yeah, it's because the finals have already been set in stone, and if one of the conference finals were to go 7, and they have to have that TV set in stone, I think just for ABC's purposes, make sure it's national television. You want to be able to give teams a rest if their series went 7, but it didn't, so now it's just a long layoff.
See, Lloyd Christmas is in the stream.
He's here.
He is here.
Is that a clever name change late, or is that
no?
Just luck?
It's new, and it's Lloyd M. Christmas. We'll see if there's a Petey reference. Pretty Bird. Pretty Bird? No clue, do you?
I'm adding a rewatch to the list. I remember the bathroom scene pretty well.
We all do. It's incredible because we've all experienced the bathroom scene. So I don't have anything for you, steak and a beer today. Your Rockies playing?
Not touching that. They've been better. They've been better as of late, to be fair. Not touching that, though.
We have Reds and Rockies, minus 120, Cincinnati.
We have some super regionals tonight.
That's fair.
Sorry, from regionals to advanced to super regional, I should say.
Mm-hmm. K-State, brother. What about them getting to a super?
How about Jackson Brockett no-hitting them?
I know. Huh. Yeah. Hey, tomorrow, Matt Schick will be with us and Mr. Mitch Sherman to release the Fury. Thanks for spending time with Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.